I was doing some of my Christmas shopping last week. Oh, no groans. I thought they'd be like, oh, speaking of starting, how many of you started your Christmas shopping? Oh, wow. How many of you wait until like the week of? Some of you. How many of you just like you're not in charge of buying gifts at your house at all? There you go. That's good. I have at my house denied Christmas music so far. Like, you got to wait for Thanksgiving for the Christmas music. Charlotte and Heather have snuck it in a little bit. But most of the time I did allow it to happen the other day when I was out and about too. But I saw these. Have you seen this Skyline calendar? I've been looking at these last couple years thinking, man, do we need this as a family? So it's a digital screen calendar, right? And does anybody have one of those? Okay, good. I can make fun of people who buy those. No, I'm just kidding. But I was reading the reviews. There are these like digital screen calendars, and you put all of your events on this calendar, and supposedly the whole family gets to see it. We've got like a paper calendar on the fridge, and that's the extent of where we go. But and I was reading the reviews for these Skyline calendars because I was thinking, man, that might help me out. But as I was reading these reviews, these people were like, this thing changed my life. Like, it totally changed my life. It was transformational in who I am and how I'm able to succeed now. And I was thinking to myself, wow, like, really? Like, and I was thinking to myself, like, the basic concept of this like digital calendar that hangs on like some people had it just like right out in their living room or their kitchen, or that hangs wherever you put it, is that it just organizes your stuff. It just organizes your stuff. It doesn't really add anything to your life. It doesn't prioritize anything for you. It doesn't give you best practices. It doesn't give you advice. It merely gives you the opportunity to organize every single thing that you have going on. So, and now, mind you, it actually what it does provides you more work, because now you actually have to like enter everything into that. And I'm sure it links with every phone and your computers and all that kind of stuff too. Now, the disclaimer for this is, obviously you can probably already tell by now that I am not a calendar person. So I have people who sometimes will ask me, well, will you share your calendar with me? I want to get together. And I was like, dude, if you looked at my calendar, you would think I was a slug who did nothing, right? Because I've got national holidays and birthdays of random people who have shared their contacts with me that have their birthday attached to it. So that's what's on my calendar. Overall, I think I probably would serve you a lot better if I was better at calendarizing things. But I'm sure there's a benefit to it and all that kind of stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, is it just basically organizes all of your stuff. And I think, though, as people, as we are kind of going through life, as we are kind of, trying to obtain or do something ourselves, I think naturally all of us want to be better and do better at life. Like, we want to, and there's tools out there that might aid you in doing that, and this calendar might be something that's that way. But down and through, we all want to be better and do better, right? And so, but how do we go about doing that? Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way, right? And so for me, in this series that we've been in, this idea of reframing our life, the idea of looking at things differently, finding our reason why, or changing our view on things, and for the most part, during this time, as we look to change our view or to adjust the way we see things, ultimately it's so that we can see things more with what God would desire for us. But these first few weeks, we've looked really kind of holistically at some of this stuff. Holistically, we've looked at how do we do that as people? How do we do that as Christians? How do we do that as the church? How do we do that as a family, as a group of believers? And last week, we kind of shifted gears a little bit and looked at some individual stuff. And today, what I want to do is I hope that we drill down a little deeper, that we look a little more like individually into our lives. We're going to hopefully personally shift our view and how would reframing or seeing things differently deepen my personal relationship with Christ. I was in contemplation over like this idea. I think this is probably not the right term to use, but adoptive faith. So adopting the faith of, say a child adopts their parents' faith, or generation passes down, you adopt the faith of the generation previous to you, or a mentor. And don't get me wrong, like that is actually incredibly biblical for us to hand down our faith, for us to share our faith, for us to pass along our faith. But it's kind of hard to find this kind of statistically. But what I feel is one of the biggest reasons why, and I was thinking about like my kids, and the fact that most all of them have not lived a life separate from big-time church involvement. Dad is a pastor, and so I was thinking about them and how my hope is that they don't just have my faith. And I think as I was thinking about that this week, I was, and it really is hard to find true statistics on this, but I think the biggest reason why young adults, late teenage year kids walk away from faith, because statistically that's the window that the most people who have been a part of a church and who leave a church, that's like the window of time that they walk away. And I think for the most part it's because they haven't adapted, or they haven't gained their own faith. They haven't took on the faith themselves. They've been living on their parents' faith. And so the faith of, or even in some cases, the faith of someone else, right? And here's the center point for us today. At some point, in order to view things and see things like this reframing, see things how God would desire for us to see it, in order to see others around you, to see the reason why and how you were created, in order to reframe your life the way God would want you to, at some point, you need to make your faith your own. It needs to be your faith. And you can't get there through solely the faith of others. Right? Your children, your spouse, your best friend, man, your mom, your dad, yourself, you will not see through the framing of what God has for you until you see God yourself. Until you see and follow him for yourself. Does that make sense? Wow, that was the most head nods I think I've ever seen. Hey, you're tracking with me. Now, that being said, I was having conversations with my buddy Eric, here in the house someplace, and we were talking about, Eric just recently lost his father, much like I did during sabbatical, and we were just talking about, and I got permission to share this, I'm learning to ask permission, but been praying for him and his family, and he and I, coming out of that similar loss and sharing and talking, he had shared with me just how much he had admired his father's faith. And his words to me were like, I just want my father's faith. And as we were discussing this, I was talking to him, I was like, that is great, but Eric, you are who you are because you have produced your own faith. Right? Over the years, as much as his parents have poured into him and gave him a great foundation of faith, and we kind of came to the agreement, it wasn't until he came to that faith himself. Now, the full circle turnaround is, now in his current situation, the faith that maybe foundationally set the tone for him, where he then gained his own faith, is now a faith he still admires and still has huge impact in his life. But I think separate from finding that own faith, Eric wouldn't be where he's at today. And for me, it's other people. I wasn't raised by church-going, Bible-believing parents, but for me, it's the same thing. I needed to find my own faith from the mentors that in my teens showed me who Jesus was. I needed to find it on my own. And so that full circle conversation with Eric just reminded me how the foundations of our faith continually shape us, right? We're continually influenced by. And we talk about it, I'll talk about it more towards the end, but until we actually invest ourselves, until we actually reach the point ourselves, we won't be able to see the life and how God has designed for us to live until we see it on our own. And here's the reality of that design. And it happened for me this week because equally as much as I'm embracing and realizing my faith in God orchestrates in the believers in my life in such a way that I am encouraged and I do grow and I do get to see. I sat across from two people this week who gave me a better glimpse at who Jesus was because of how they shared with me. And so as much as it is my own, we still play that role individually to impact each other's faith. And I see that through each and every one of you. 2 different times this week, I had huge impact in that way. And I say it maybe every few times I'm up here. I say, I wish you had the view that I have. Because I get to look out and I get to see, because of our relationship and because of my position and because of who you are, I get to see the way that God has worked in amazing ways in like each and every one of your lives. And I wish you had this view. And it's not metaphorical. I mean, if you want to preach, we could work that out. The stage is open. We can work together. But no, like the view of just actually seeing the relationships that are present and the work that God's doing from here, like from this view and from you sharing your life with me and my family and me being able to share my life with you and be open with you, granted from the stage. But the idea is that I get to see how God is working. And because of that, I walk a little taller. I'm more confident. I wrestle with this word. I'm more aggressive with, and maybe it's just this morning and the too much coffee, but I'm more caring. I'm more compassionate. I'm more understanding. I'm more encouraged. And so, church, I want to like pose that question. Do you feel that way in your life? Like, do you feel like you have a view of, even outside of your own faith, of the way God is working in the people's lives around you? Like, do you have a part of your life where you have that view of others? Are you, or have you come to the revelation of your own faith? And is your life right now full of and surrounded by the stories of God's faithfulness in other people's lives? Because that ultimately shapes your faith as well. Romans 1:12 says, that is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. It's 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore, encourage one another, build each other up, just as in the fact that you are doing. Hebrews 10:23-25. Let us hold fast the confessions of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Let us consider how to stir one another up in love and in good works, not neglecting to meet together, as it is in the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day draw near. All those scriptures, as well as many, many others throughout the Bible, tell us about the benefit of gathering together, doing life together, encouraging one another, sharing your faith. Not only that idea of sharing your faith with people that don't know Jesus, but sharing your faith with the people who know Jesus as they see him through how you see him as well. And we benefit from seeing that through each other as well. And so I asked the other day, it seems like the answer to all of the questions, I was asked this the other day, Jason, you talk about every week this idea of like the struggles you have, and I love that you're open with us. And the answer often is, the answer to the struggles that we talk about on Sunday is like more Jesus, more God, more faith. Like, how do I do that? Is how it was kind of like, if we were to just basically break, like, how do I do that? How do I do that? And so I struggle with that. I actually get that because I think like that is the answer. But how do we do that? And so I'm going to start here. Do whatever it is that draws you closer to your Creator, draws you closer into God, draws you deeper into a relationship with Jesus. Not what desires not a desired outcome that He would bring about, but what draws you closer to Him in relationship with Him. It's this idea of like ends and means. So the ends to a means, where God should never be the means to an end. Like we should never approach God to then get a desired outcome. Does that make sense? And so instead, we have a desired outcome, and we realize the only way we're going to get there is with God. So instead of desiring an outcome, and quite frankly, we can't allow God to be the means to an end that we desire. He is the end. The moment the end becomes anything other than God, the moment the desired outcome becomes anything other than God, the moment we see our lives to produce an end result or a way of life that then becomes this controlling sight where we're aiming our life at, as opposed to aiming our life towards who God is and the truth He is in our lives. And in all honesty, because I struggle with it as well, that focus, that direction becomes consuming. That end result becomes maybe what we worship or what we put our affection in. It becomes what we desire. It becomes, honestly, what we might even obsess about. More than, you want to put a more biblical word on it, it's idolatry. Anything that becomes the desired thing other than God is idolatry. It's idol worship. And so, and that's rooted in there in kind of the main things we've talked about. We've talked about this in the past. This is the Christian way, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of life. I heard it, that's the scripture upon it. And oftentimes when I read that, I think to myself, well, man, that's kind of hard to grasp and put some meaning behind it. But I heard it put this way, which was really fun for me because it helped me understand it a little bit more. It's instead of lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life, it's feeling things, having some stuff, and being somebody. That when those things become what we desire, my feeling and how I feel is the most important thing, having some stuff, building up some stuff, or just being somebody, my image, right? Whenever those things take precedence, whenever those things become the focus to which, or the purpose in which we live, thus is adultery. And when, really like I mentioned it before, when God is before those things, at the front of them all, He is the lens to which we frame and look into, and how we see everything in life. That's the correct order. Another way to put those three things is our hearts and our desires, our things that we have in this life, and who we are is all in the truth of what God says. Does that make sense? Little less head nods, okay? I was having a lunch with a friend of mine, and we were discussing life and how the two of us were talking about the messes we make in our lives, and why in general we were trying to just be better as husbands, as parents, as dads. And we got to talking about how, I've been very upfront with this, like over sabbatical, I started seeing a counselor. I've continued to do it. And he started to see a counselor too. And we were talking about our experiences with that and how both of us were a little fearful of two things. One, that our counseling would become a Bible study, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I needed to work on my stuff. And he's like, I needed to work on my stuff. I wasn't signing up for a Bible study. I can do that with church. And both of our counselors in that case were very, very strong believers, faith-based counseling. Or we also didn't want our counseling to be behavior modification, because behavior modification doesn't get you to that relationship with God. Like, we can change those wrong behaviors in our lives and try to control those things, and those can be the focus, and those can be the things that we try to do in our lives over and over. That doesn't bring us closer to God. And so we were talking about these things and kind of rested on this idea that just God has to be a part of it all. And I can't remember if I heard this analogy or I'm adapting it a little bit myself, but this idea would be if you were to go to a doctor, right? And the doctor you went to, you broke your arm, and you were to go to the doctor's office, and the doctor would say, man, you broke your arm. The x-ray shows you broke your arm, and your arm's broken. And so we know now, if you just don't bump it on anything, you should be all right. You'll walk around with a broken arm. Like, he doesn't splint it up. He doesn't, cast it. He doesn't, maybe doesn't even, like, give you meds or anything, but he just kind of addresses the idea and lets you know that you have a broken arm. And we liken that idea of both of us going to counseling, or this idea of trying to be better and trying to do better as husbands and dads and coworkers and all that kind of stuff. Like, if we just attempt to go after that without including God in it, it's like going to that doctor and him not treating the arm. And so as we were talking about our ideas, and we all actually probably have ways that we cope with the toughest things in our lives. Whether it's, I'm a fan of modern medicine. That's fine. I think God created parts of it, and we can utilize it, but it can't become the thing. As I've said before, I'm a fan of preventative counseling and this idea of professionals helping me get and understand more. But what I'm not a fan of is those things separate of God. Like, God's got to be a part of whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever it is that you're focused in on, that has caused your attention, or that has given you anxiety or stress, or that you obsess about. Like, you have to include God in on those things, on the healing. And anything separate that doesn't include God in it is not going to bring the healing and what he desires for you in your life. Again, life lived, pursued, life reliant, or centered on anything other than Christ will not reveal what it is that you're hoping it will reveal, or gain control of what it is that you're hoping to gain control of. And so we visit back more on this idea of more Christ, all Christ, more God, more truth, more understanding. How do we do that? How do we do that? Is it prayer? That's a great thing. Is it reading your Bible? Is it going to church? Is it singing out in worship? Is it Bible study? Is it quiet time? Yes. But I think of it more as, even separate from those actions, I think of it more as, behold, he is God. Reverence and awe. Where do you draw near to him? Where is he closest to you? Where in your life is it a practice that you feel like you draw closest to him? For some of those things that I just listed, it's a big yes for some of you. For others of you, have you shared with me the things that you're like, I actually don't really like that, or that isn't my thing on any of those things? I would challenge, yes, draw close to him, and he's actually going to reveal, because all of those other things are acts of worship, right? Prayer and quiet time and knowledge and knowing and understanding the scriptures and singing, even if you're really bad at it. Like, understanding and recognizes where you draw closest to him, and do that. But then also, all those other things will follow. And in all honesty, anything that blocks the flow of Christ in you, sin, separation from God. And then anything that blocks the flow of that coming out of you, sin, separation from God. And those are the things that we have to work to eliminate so that we can experience ourselves that closeness to who he is and what he has for us. I often say it this way, and this week I was challenged because I say this a lot, and it caused me to rethink, and maybe it's a season of life for me personally, or maybe you can relate to this, and I'm probably going to spend some time changing it up, but I often say, what's God doing in your life right now? Like, stop and ask the question. Like, if you were a part of any of my small groups or anything like that, I often take a week, and say, or even if we meet on a regular basis, I say, what's God doing in your life right now? And if it's tough to answer that question, I think, well, you got to incorporate God in the things of your life. And so I think what we do with that, we become the habit of doing that, is that we insert God into things in our life. When really that's kind of the backwards part of it. Instead of like allowing God into an area of our life, or set the stage for him to allow him in or let him in, to insert him in is the wrong idea. The bigger question is, and what I was kind of convicted of this week is, where are you and how are you drawing close to Christ in your life? That, my friends, is where we want to be. There's a common scripture that we use around here. I think Nicole adapted it for the women's ministry. John 15, famous verse, right? Verse 1, I am the true vine, the Father is the gardener. He cuts off the branches that bear no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be more fruitful. Remain in me as I am in you, and no branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And so this scripture is used readily. You've probably heard me preach on it. You've probably heard it read. It's too long for a bumper sticker, but what I left out of that text was verse 3. And I don't know about you, but as I recognize all of that scripture, like vine dresser, like the whole cutting of the branches, like, oh, that's tough. But God cuts things out of my life so that I can bear more fruit. But the middle verse, the anchor verse between verse 1 and 5 is verse 3. And I think oftentimes we just read over it. Like, we skip over it because it's a great analogy. It's a gardening analogy. I'm not a gardener, but I can still relate to this. And it says this in verse 3. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. You are already clean because of the words I have spoken to you. It's not about doing or achieving, living a certain way, or eliminating certain things in your life, or measuring up to a certain thing. It's not about addressing the areas of your life and trying to control them. And I mean, because quite honestly, most of the things in all of our lives are a gift from God. Very few things in your life are something that the devil is using. Now, he uses it because we allow him to, and we actually address those things differently. But food, alcohol, sex, family, at work, all of these things are a gift from God. But what we do, money, like what we do is we actually turn those into things that allow the enemy to use them. And what God desires for us to do, it's not about achieving or living or eliminating those things or measuring up in these certain ways. It's living out that promise and truth that Christ has already done for us in our lives. It's about receiving him. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. That even in that verse of the whole text of John 15, you aren't doing these things, the pruning and the bearing of fruit and the cutting and the grafting and the watering. You're not doing those things so that you will be. You're doing those things because you are already through what Christ has done. It's because, as a follower of Jesus, as one who's placed your faith and trust in him, you are already clean. And through Christ and the words and works that he has done, all that, from that, for you, for us, we can draw close to him in all areas of our lives. And it's my desire, it's God's desire for you to continually draw close in the truth of who he is. Not in the achievement or lack of or eliminating of anything that you have done. I'm going to invite the band to come forward because this is what I want to do, church. I want us to do just that. I want us to take these last two songs, and I would love for us, as an attempt, to take the truth of which has probably brought you here. I mean, I'm pretty cool to hang out with. You know, some of you are pretty cool to hang out with. All of you are pretty cool to hang out with. But hopefully we're here for the truth of what Christ has done for each one of us, what he desires for our hearts, what he desires for our life. I know for me, some weeks, this is where I feel closest. And for some of you, maybe it's not. And man, that is awesome. Practice this later on in the week with those opportunities you have to draw close to him. But what I want for us to do right now this morning is for us to try to be still, to present, to allow ourselves to draw close to him. If it's for 10 minutes and 3 songs, I added one last second. We would draw near to him for what he desires for us. I think you'd be amazed, if you're able to get there, what he would say to you. Lord, right now, may you center our hearts and minds on you. Lord, it is my desire, and you can pray it with me. It is our desire every Sunday morning to come here and meet with you, to be with you. Lord, there are weeks that this is the moment where I feel closest to you. And so I pray for that moment right now. That this week, this be a moment where I intentionally feel the closest to you. Not that I've allowed you to be here, but that you've allowed me into your presence. You desire me to be in your presence. Just help me to see how near you are